Well, hello, and a very warm welcome to this episode of On the Spot, the sort of experimental coffee break shaped LinkedIn live show. My name is Adrian Reed, and I'm really pleased to be joined today by Kristy Dean. Now, Kristy Dean is a digital BA specialist and well-known speaker in the BA community. You may well have seen one of her webinars or seen her at the BA Conference Europe. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that's really important and probably more relevant than ever. We're going to be talking about emotional intelligence and discussing whether there's more to it than empathy. So, Kristy, thanks very much for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Adrian.
So, Kristy, for anyone that's joining that might not have heard of emotional intelligence or might have heard it but not been entirely sure what it is, how would you describe it?
Yeah, out of many explanations through books and research online, I think the most one I've connected with is from this little handy pocket book, Emotional Intelligence by Jill Hansen, and it's about using your emotions to inform your thinking, and then using your thinking to understand and manage your emotions. So it's like a dynamic, never-ending circle of like a feedback loop, and you can then take it one step further in terms of once you can understand what's happening with you, you can try to understand what the emotions that other people are feeling and experiencing, and you can use that information to manage how you would respond to them in given situations. So it's like sense of self and sense of others, and using that information as you would any other input into conversations that you're having.
That's interesting. That idea of that feedback loop is a really powerful one, and it's interesting to think. So I suppose springboarding from that, we can use it to manage our own, understand ourselves, and manage our own state, our own emotional state, but also recognize patterns in others or potential maybe distress in others, for example, which helps us respond to them in an empathetic way.
Yeah, and I think with that feedback loop, it's not just kind of for those difficult situations, but we have a whole range of emotions, and that start point of actually putting your finger on which emotion you may be experiencing at any particular time can be the biggest challenge in that first step forward. So once you kind of have established how those thoughts and feelings come about and how to name them, you can put in the full range, not just those difficult and challenging ones, but how you can inspire others, how you can put positivity into a conversation at the most appropriate time, because I'm sure, as we can all appreciate at the moment, there was a phrase the other day used of the fake positivity, the unwanted, oh, it'll all be fine, it's great, reading the situation from an emotional standpoint, and then, as I say, managing your responses appropriately.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've had a comment in, and by the way, if you are watching live, do feel free to add a comment, and we'll pop a few up on screen, and your name will come up on your picture and so on. And George says, great topic, especially for those in a technical space, which is interesting, isn't it? Because I do think that sometimes there's almost a perception, and I don't think it's necessarily correct, but that people in a technical role can just sort of get on with it and almost be automatic and heads down. But we're all human. We're all going through stuff all of the time. So that brings us on to the next question, which is, how does EI differ from empathy? Because we've talked about how it might help us manage ourselves, manage our response to others. That sounds similar to empathy. So where would you say that the differences are, Kristy?
So I think empathy is a part of how you use your emotional intelligence, but it's not the only part. A lot. There's been a lot of conversation recently about being more people orientated, exercising your empathy. And empathy is a really important skill. It's about trying to understand somebody else's situation from their perspective. It's not putting your own feelings and emotions onto them, but trying to understand where they're coming from.
Mm.
So that it's part of that feedback loop. But so when you're able to understand others, it's understanding yourself first. And I think that's where the difference comes in. It's learning to be, not to sound too hippie, but being in touch with yourself, knowing what's going on in here and in here, and managing that in a way that will help you understand others, which is where empathy is and where it comes in. So your emotional intelligence isn't just about empathy, but empathy does play a part in that process.
It's interesting. I remember someone once, and this is probably an analogy that's been used many times, but it's always stuck with me, about like knowing yourself first, and to some extent about looking after yourself first. I remember someone using the analogy of this is a crazy one to use, given none of us have probably been on an aeroplane for a year or more, but it, like that always fit your own oxygen mask before helping somebody else, because otherwise, if you pass out because there's a lack of oxygen, then you can't help anyone else. So would you say there's an element of EI in actually, unless you really know where you're at, it's really hard to know where someone else is at and actually offer any kind of empathetic support? Is there an element of that, would you say, Kristy?
Yeah, I would agree there is an element of that. I think it's not that a cut and dry type thing of you have to have one before you can exercise the other.
Yeah.
But certainly there would be some key indicators if somebody was having a particularly difficult day, or down to the level of detail, if you notice somebody's a bit quieter on a call than they would normally be, or slightly less enthused in their interactions, there's that level of awareness would increase with your own awareness.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's part of it.
Yeah, and Vince is clearly tuned in, because Vince says we all feel, most of us at least. So I think yeah, absolutely. So we're all human, feeling what we feel. So I guess the sort of $64,000 question, Kristy, is why does this matter for business analysts, project managers, product managers, change and product people generally?
Yeah, and I think I'd say, think about your day to day. Do you complete your work by yourself in isolation? And I think the majority of the time the answer to that is going to be no. So change practitioners, we work through projects that affect other people's work and how they would do their day to day, and that change management is a key part of it. So having an awareness of your emotional intelligence fits into that. But also, if you look at like jobs within the tech industry, you might say, as you've already said, Adrian, about you just get on and do the job. Yeah, but how do you get your sense of fulfillment from that? We are building digital journeys and transformations for a customer to go on, so they can self-serve. So
Yeah.
in that respect, we're not interacting with our customers less in the digital platforms, but in order to build those journeys, we need to work with people. So it's all about how do you manage your working relationships, full stop.
That's really interesting. As you were speaking there, Kristy, I was thinking of two aspects to that. There's the aspect of us as practitioners of change working with people to help define those journeys, and those people might be in particular places. We might be in a particular emotional state or whatever, and so might they, and so on. But then there is the designing journeys, digital or otherwise, that are actually suitable for people who are going through different life events. So, for example, I always remember I was working for a financial services firm, and I did some observation. And one of the first calls that I heard the person take was, my spouse has died. I need to know how to get access to their financial affairs.
Yeah.
And as a BA, I was amazed the empathy with which this person dealt with that, and it was something we probably never specified a process for. And that was a wake-up call for me. It's like, yeah, 80-20 rule kind of goes out the window in those situations. So I suppose it's multi-layered, perhaps.
Yeah, it's life, isn't it? It's life coming into those processes that we build, and and having those human touch points. It's very interesting when you look at like bot technology. How may that play a part in our future? It's all very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vince has put another comment on the cognitive skills, because I hate the term soft skills, are the differentiator. I think that's probably right, isn't it? It's like, actually, when you think about it, you think about good change people, good business analysts, good digital business analysts, good product project managers. It's the ones with the good people skills that you remember.
It is, and yeah, and I don't like the term soft skills either, Vincent. To be perfectly honest, core skills for me kind of ticks every box. It's to the very core of what we can do within our roles, and potentially one of those differentiators between a really good BA and a great BA. And when you get some feedback around, I don't want to deal with people. I don't know how. And I think one of those other key elements to your emotional intelligence is it's something that you can learn about, something that you can kind of enhance within your skill sets. It's different to your IQ, which is obviously that fixed value. Your EQ is not dependent on your gender or your age. It's something that you can learn on and enhance. So it's worth, if you struggle, maybe making connections with people, looking into.
Yeah, that's another really I find quite sort of almost liberating and inspiring thing, is that it is something that's elastic. We can change it, we can improve it, we can become better, and I guess probably becomes better with practice. Actually, actively seeking out. So, Kristy, final question for you, which is, what would your biggest tip or takeaway be around this whole idea of emotional intelligence, empathy, and so on?
I would say just learn about it some more. If you are thinking if you're one of those types of people that thinks, oh, it's not for me, I'd invite you to have a shift in that mindset. Read a bit more about it. Dig into a bit more detail. And to quote another one of our BA community members, Christina Lovelock, retrospect yourself. Dig in, spend some time with yourself, and get in touch with your emotional intelligence.
Yeah, which does seems so important, doesn't it? Particularly where we're all distributed, we're all working in a different environment at the moment than perhaps we would ideally be working in. So it seems that this is a really timely skill set, both for ourselves and for that sort of ability to work with our stakeholders. So, Kristy, thank you very much for taking the time out to have a chat today. Really, really interesting set of topics. We could talk about this for hours. I really could talk about this for hours. So if people want to follow you, stay in touch, what's the best way for people to stay in touch?
Yeah, mostly just on LinkedIn. You'll find me under Kristy Dean.
Fantastic, and and there's a previous recorded webinar that we've done together that people can tune into as well. So fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Kristy. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll speak again soon.
Same to you too, Adrian. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks very much for everyone for watching.